performance results.
Good morning, everyone. Right, there's probably a need not to labour the point on some of this stuff because these organisational performance results for January are very similar to last month, but nonetheless we need to do the overview. Half-year January results are a very good predictor of where we're likely to finish at year-end. Historically, they've been closely correlated to the year-end. Very similar to last month, we've got a few targets that are a few percent off. That's likely to be the challenge for year-end, getting that extra couple of percent. So community levels of service are sitting just 2% shy of where we want to be. Some of that may get picked up in the resident survey. Capital projects are the same. The key projects are very close at 2% out. You'll get a bit more detail from Andrew in the capital project report. Non-key projects are a little lower, so that's a challenge there. In terms of planning for capital delivery, remembering that planning is the first end of the pipe. What you're seeing coming out the other end is the delivery. We're absolutely fine for being planned out for 2025, and we're slightly shy for 2026 and 27, but with several months to go, nearly a quarter of a year to go, and only a couple of percent to make. So we will pick that up. That will go green for year end. So the real challenges are we're just a little shy around level of service and capital delivery. Overall budget is looking good. OPEX budget is in surplus by 2 million. Capital budget is also being spent, but I would emphasise, and we've had conversations about this recently, capital spend is not really the benchmark for how we assess capital. It's delivery, and the delivery is very close. So with a fair wind, I think we will pick that up as well. So the real challenge is for all of our heads of service to look at the level of service stuff and try and pick up that extra couple of percent there. We will be bringing the resident survey results to you, or an overview of initial results shortly, and there is some good news in there, and certainly some services have turned around quite well. I won't foreshadow exactly what the results are, but yeah, there are some positive signs in there. So with luck, we may pick up some levels of service there as well. So look, that's the overall vital signs. There'll be more detail in the capital project reporting and in the finance report. I'm happy to field questions. If they're genuinely detailed subject matter expert questions, I may need to work with the heads of service and come back to you with a reply.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. We've got a couple of questions. The first one for me, can you, in terms of the resident survey, is there anything else you can share now? I'm just conscious we're in the public domain around timings of that. It's good to hear there's some improvements.
Yes, look, we have always undertaken to get initial results to council in the public space as quickly as possible. That will be within the next week, 10 days. I believe it's on the agenda. The report is on the agenda for council. And the really detailed technical reporting is going to follow probably a month to 6 weeks after that. But we do want to provide... The technical reporting is more of interest to staff about highly specific things. But in terms of council and the community, we've never been able to get results to you earlier than this. This is really pushing the limits on what can be done, and there's been some long hours pulled to make that happen.
That's great. It will certainly help in terms of the LTP consultation as well.
That's why.
Sort of what's important.
That's the driver, is to help inform the LTP.
That's fantastic. And I said Lynn was nodding at me saying it's 6th of March. It's going to come to council, so that'll be public, I imagine, this Thursday.
Yes.
So
yes,
that's fantastic. Great. Okay, Sarah had a question. Or questions?
Thank you. First of all, a process question with this ahead of more specific department staff. When there are levels of service not being met, either a medium or a high level, high risk, and there's remedial actions in place, how do those remedial actions feed into recommendations to council? Like if there's a report coming?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I follow.
Okay, so
there's an officer...
there's an example here. So on page 25, we've got a a measure on more people choosing to travel by cycling. And one of the remedial actions, the first sentence in the remedial actions is retain original 2024 deadline to deliver the cycle related surf projects. And yet we have a report on the agenda today which looks at cancelling those projects. So how do the remedial actions within the performance structure relate to recommendations to council?
Well, look, I will defer to subject matter expert, but I will say also before that, there is a lag between these reports being constructed, because this is a January report. We're now nearly at the end of February. If circumstances have moved since the officer filled this in, and I'm sure it was done with good faith at the time,
But that,
maybe something has shifted in between in that month of lag.
Yeah. There's a funding shift, but the action is the remedy, not the funding. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anyway, if we could.
I think this is really a specific subject matter thing that I can't answer how the funding side works.
Maybe we'll deal with it in the next, when we get to the other report. When it comes to water, we've got 10 levels of service for water supply, and we're currently not meeting 8 of those. And I'm just wondering, one of them mentions that there's a plan being that's being developed for the plan to repair the delayed leaks underway. Is it possible to see those plans?
Yes, I'm sure that the head of can respond there. I do have to pull back to the purpose of this report before Brent speaks to it. It's really, and you'll see that diagram there which shows you where the activities are and water and transport around levels of service a bit lower. It's to direct the council's eye to areas that need a look, and you're saying what's the next step?
That's
the next step is specific response from the head of.
Yeah.
The report can't do the high view and the detail.
Oh, that's right. It's just that when we don't necessarily need to see the plans now. The problem is that we've not been meeting sort of 8 out of 10 of our water performance levels of service for some time, but we haven't yet, as a council, we've seen the remedial actions listed, but we haven't actually seen the detail of how that's being done.
So I wonder, Sarah, so good question. So you may be aware, or if not, there's a 3 Waters paper coming next week, as I understand it, to council. But while you've got the head of service here, I'm more than happy if you've got some specific questions now that Peter's answered the process one.
Yeah.
So do you want to ask?
The key one for me
is... Can we not talk it? So Brent, you go first, and then Sarah can ask.
Absolutely. In some of those areas where it indicates we're not meeting levels of service is a carryover from last year. Where we didn't meet them, we don't turn them green. For example, some of them may be around customer satisfaction where we don't have results yet, so they stay orange until we get to that point. However, following yesterday's meeting, I've already asked staff to prepare some information around things like the water leaks and what those action plans are, which we hope to bring back within the next 2 months to council. So absolutely take on board what you're saying, and I'll take that away and get some information through.
Great. And will next week's report deal with the protozoa issues as well? Just that's hitting the media and things at the moment too.
Sure, the protozoa issue is mentioned in the report, and our plans to do so. It's quite specific in the stations that we need to upgrade, wells we need to deepen, that sort of thing, and what our program is for that.
That's great, thanks. Actually, Sam, it would be really useful if we could get just a forward look at the reports that are coming to council at some point. That would be.
So I think maybe I think you were here. We talked about getting a work program put into the agendas. So.
Great.
Unless that was last week, I think, where you raised it and we agreed to it. So that will be happening. Yes, I'm not sure. Is that what you meant?
No, it was like a bit that asked for things to be put, for a program of reports to come.
Yeah.
We just don't have visibility as council to see when those are coming. That's all.
No, that's what we talked about last week. So I think we agreed, and Megan will correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to have, or Mary. We're going to have a thing in every agenda which has the work program. So you raised it and we agreed to it. I'm sure. I think you were here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's cross purposes here, but that's okay. I'll check up afterwards.
Well, no, you just like we said, in a normal environment, you have a work program that says when stuff is coming, which will reflect the levels of service. So, am I missing something?
There's two different things. There's the work program within each report. So the Three Waters work program, for example, but then there's our work program and the reports that we'll be looking at, which is they're two different things.
Well,
Clarify that the work program presentations in the different areas are what we're going to be reporting against. Monthly or fortnightly. The work program that Councillor McDonald's talking about is actually a work program for the committee that says what you're expecting when.
Yeah. So we are getting that. Cool.
Yep. Great. Okay.
Can I just suggest that conversation be in the context of the Three Waters activity plans, which is actually where the go forward program of work is.
Melanie?
You're there, Brett, sorry. Just with the one about the consumption of water per litre per resident per day, has that, how does it compare to, say, a year ago? Do you know?
I'd have to find that out for you, Councillor. And a lot of those measures are in there because they're required by DIA. So I'd have to find that information for you.
It'd be interesting to see if it's tracking upwards following the change.
Yeah, currently this year, in terms of not the consumption one, but the litres per household, and that is still tracking okay for this year.
Great. Yanni?
Yeah, I see that under water supply on page 27, we're not protozoal compliant. Just wondering where we've got to with the drinking water regulator and whether we've had any conversations with ministers about the whole forced chlorination of our water and all the upgrades that we're required to do. I know staff have previously given us a really good briefing on some of the key things that we feel are quite unrealistic, and I know that we've previously invited the regulator to come and talk to us, and it seemed like the regulator was quite open to working with us, but I just don't quite know where all that's got to, and it would be good to just kind of understand what the level of risk is around not meeting that compliance.
So good question. Yeah. Brent, are you able to?
Sure, Councillor. And all that information that you're talking about is in the quarterly report coming next week. And we are working very closely with the regulator now. They are doing some investigations into the quality of the water in the deep bores, and the detail around our program to achieve protozoa compliance is in the report next week.
And the other question I had was in regards to the satisfaction with responsiveness to water supply problems. So that's page 28. In the past, it's been really helpful for staff to prepare a chart of the complaints that we're getting, the degree of the complaint, whether it's urgent, non-urgent, and the time frame for response. And that was quite useful to know what the response time was from the contractor to the complaints people were putting in. Is it possible, is that in the report for next week, or is it possible to get an updated one showing the number of complaints, the type of complaints, and what the response time is for each of them, so that we've got a sense of what the trends are?
There is summary information in the report next week on those response times. Bearing in mind we get around 1,500, on average 1,500 calls per month, leaks and what have you, providing a lot of detail on that information won't be possible on that report, but there's certainly a summary there, and we can, if there's anything specific you need after that, we can dig into that.
Yes, what I'm trying to understand is what percentage of the, or what, in terms of the problem, in terms of just satisfaction, how much is that to do with our contractors' performance not meeting what they're supposed to do versus the sheer volume of what we're receiving and the state of our network?
Perhaps that's something for discussion next week, Councillor. The volume is what it is. If we have calls, the contractors will ramp up to fix them. I have no issue with the performance of the current contractors. As I say, if there's anything more specific that you're aware of, I can take that offline and investigate it for you. But
okay,
response times have been good.
I'm keen to move along. So I've got Aaron, and then we'll move on to the next paper. So Aaron.
Yeah, a couple of questions around the top of page 26. So the first one is the non-car mode daily trips. We've got a target of around 37%, but we're only at 30.2 and seem to be going backwards. But we're spending lots of money trying to do the opposite.
That might be a Lynette question.
And it could be a data issue.
Do you want to rephrase the question? Do you want to make it a question?
Do you want to what?
Can you make it a question?
Well, the question is that we have a target that we're not meeting by a considerable amount, yet we're spending lots of money to get to the target. So, but it could be the measurements and the changes coming to those. Because when you're spending tens of millions, you should know what you should always have a target, and then you should meet it before you spend another tens of millions.
Lynette, are you able to answer that?
Sorry, different technologies. Can't scroll. I'm not sure I can. Not straight away. I'll have to.
Okay.
I'll have to look into it, and I'll discuss with the councillor what the information he wants to get out of it.
So, Aaron, have you got another question?
Yeah, because there's also the spending on all the safety measures as well, and we're not in line to meet that target either. We're going to go over, unfortunately.
Yep, and I'm just not clear on the question.
Well, okay, so when you keep doing the same thing, but getting the same answer, do you keep doing the same thing, just spend more money on it?
I don't think that's a question Lynette can answer. That's probably one for our
Are
colleagues.
you talking to?
It's an age-old question, but
Okay, so I'm keen. So Victoria, and then we're going to move this on. So, and Phil's happy to move it, and Melanie looks like she's happy to second it.
Mine's a supplementary, and it might be able to help Aaron out. For me, the issue is around the data that we're collecting, and are we collecting the right data? Because when you read the comments that attempt to justify why it is that we're tracking below, it really raises some issues about the questions about the collection of our data. Are we collecting the right data? Are we reporting it in a way that's useful for us? Because if it's not, then we really need to look at that.
Which particular? Are we talking about the crashes and injuries one?
that's accurate.
Well, it's in relation to the remedial action at the top of page 26 when we're talking about the non-car modes and daily trips, and the following up on the comment that my colleague Councillor Kewen was making. To my mind, the issue is about what is the data collecting, and if it's not telling us what we need it to, then perhaps we need to have a closer look at that. Have you got some comments on that? Because if we haven't got meaningful variance, then there's really no point in putting the data to us.
Well, I don't know that it can be construed from that it's not meaningful. I mean, we're asking people how do they travel, and they're telling us. The fact that it doesn't change may mean that they're not changing.
But we've got that there's a review of the method of measurements planned.
I get where both of you are coming from. I think the question is, are we comfortable that the data that's being fed into these reports is the appropriate data?
Well, I am, yes, because there are actually not very many alternatives. There were other mechanisms, I believe ECAN used to measure this stuff, and they stopped doing it. So we've had to step into that space.
Okay.
It does.
I'm keen to move this on, Vic. I get your point, but I think it's probably something we can take offline at a later stage.
Well, they tell us they're going to review the method of measurement, so I'd quite like some information on that perhaps at some later stage.
Well,
That is happening as part of the LTP process, and that's the only time it can happen because the method of measurement is set in the LTP. That's what we're doing with you right now.
okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Russell, you're up.
Thanks very much,
Financial
Mr.
report,
Chair.
right, mate.